I am Yaser Abunnasr. I'm a faculty member at the Landscape Design and Ecosystem Management Department at the American University of Beirut. The research I will be presenting to you looks at rethinking zoning using an ecological and place-based approach in the context of Lebanese villages in the rural mountains. The reason why the project was initiated with my graduate student Roger Neaimeh, whom we're actually collaborating on this project, and we're working on publishing an article very soon. But the main reasoning is that there is a strong cultural heritage in Lebanon that goes back to historical cultural landscapes that are being lost very quickly due to urbanization. Even rural villages that are remote, that are still partially dependent on agricultural systems, are being lost due to predominantly due to the zoning system that is applied in Lebanon. The zoning system was developed in the 1960s and was never updated since then. The main focus is about real estate value of the land without taking any other valuation or accounting of the value of the land to the place, and the zoning itself does not really account to the geographical and the landscape context. For example, the mountains of Lebanon are very steep, characterized with a lot of valleys and wooded areas, and the same zoning plan or the same directives of the zoning plan in that rural context are exactly the same or very close to an urban context like the capital city of Beirut. Well, the study, the main objective of the study was to look at the current zoning plan and try and identify specific important areas within the village of Jazin, which is our case study area, that are ecologically valuable, economically valuable, at the same time important to the people, and then look at and overlay all these layers into the existing zoning plan to develop a more nuanced zoning plan that actually accounts for all these values. So the methodology is a different, a lot of methodologies were used in combination in this research. First, a site survey and a field survey was conducted in the premise with a full coverage, full photographic coverage, and then archival research to look at the process of the zoning system as well as the history of the time and the town, plus at the same time socioeconomic reports to try and identify what are the drivers of the economy during that time. And then the second level of work was to look at all the spatial layers of the area to try and identify specific landscape character zones, and in this, the geomorphological layers, land use, river systems, and so forth were all incorporated into that system. And from those physical features, we identified the inherent importance, the important areas within that landscape. And the third dimension was a series of interviews with close to 20 people in the area who've been living there for a while or recent comers, to try and understand which areas of the landscape or which parts of the cultural landscapes are significant to the people. All of this was combined together into a GIS system where all the layering, even the people's perception or understanding of the landscape was incorporated into the GIS layers to try and identify through a systematic way what are the important areas that combines the place attachment values people have to the actual inherent values of these units. But as we know very well, once this step was completed, we actually came up with multiple polygons that are important adjacent to the area, but once you start considering the economic layer, since the town or the village is very much right now, in addition to some agriculture, is very much dependent on the ecotourism and ecological, approaches to living and so forth. A lot of these units then were assessed all over again to try and develop connections with the economic base, at the same time with the larger scale or the regional scale of the cultural landscape. After looking at the final outcome of this exercise is a revised zoning plan. So the original zoning plan included 12 zones within that, and they are predominantly focused on very much the geographic, or I think the Chicago School of Geography, where it's very much concentric, the urban center, and then development becomes less and less towards the peripheries. The original zoning plan did not include any protected areas whatsoever. So out of the 12, we've developed close to 20, if I recall correctly, 25 zones, and then including in those areas significant protected areas, either for agricultural value or for ecotourism or for ecological purposes. At the same time, we also, once we developed the whole new zoning system, we also looked at the time-based zoning system, which means that even the areas that have been designated as development areas, not all the areas will be open for development. So the idea is that you start where density exists now, and then parts of those areas that are adjacent to this dense areas are open for immediate development, and as time goes and values change, maybe we really don't need to open up the whole area for development. So in that way, the zoning can balance out between what is ecologically, culturally, place-based, the values that people put on these places, at the same time for the need of development and economic real estate development. I think there are two pieces here. The application of protected areas and so forth is actually new to our part of the world. I think for either Europe or the US or other more where planning systems are a bit more developed, I think this is really not new. I think it's the method. I think that would be a good contribution to this by overlaying the physical dimensions of the place or the inherent value with the value that people place or attach to a certain location, and combining those and let those inform the zoning process. I think this approach is relatively new in that sense, and the way it is incorporated in a zoning tool is also, I think, it would be a good contribution, to the overall knowledge in planning.